Hey gang, Bryan here. If you're coming to this episode from a podcast called Bring Me the Axe, I'd like to assure you that you're in the right place. Dave and I decided that before we got too deep into this podcast business, we changed the name of the show to something a little more original. As it happens, there's like 6 podcasts called The Brothers Grimm. It's hard enough already to stand out amongst all the other horror podcasts. Why make it harder on ourselves by confusing ourselves with other shows? From now on, we're the Bring Me the Axe Horror Pod. And if you want to connect with us on other platforms, you can find us simply by Googling Bring Me the Axe Horror Podcasts. We're everywhere. And now, on with the show.
You're listening to the Brothers Grimm podcast, presented by the Cinema Suicide Film Society on Substack. If you want to keep up with us between episodes, you can also find us on Twitter at GrimmBrosPod. And if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. Also, you'd be doing us a favor by leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Just want to get that all out of the way right up top. I'm Bryan White. I'm editor-in-chief of Cinema Suicide. I'm joined by my co-host and actual brother, Dave White. Dave, how are you?
Oh, hey, pretty good, pretty good. I got a question for you, though. I was thinking about this earlier.
Shoot.
What do you think is the creepiest scene from any horror movie you've ever seen?
Oh, that's a...
Yeah, you didn't see me coming with that, did you?
No, that's a real surprise. I usually go to the Sentinel when I think about creepy. The Beverly D'Angelo masturbating scene is really, really upsetting. Also, when the sort of all the sort of spooks come out of hell and are just kind of like wandering around the apartment building and that chasing Christina Rains like that really gets to me. I don't know if I had more time to prepare. I could probably.
Yeah, see, I was gonna give you more time to prepare, and I thought, no, I'm just gonna come in hot with it.
I don't know what do you got?
I used to think that it was the scene in The Haunting where everything's kind of going to hell and the ghost is banging on the walls and she wakes up and she thinks it's Theo holding her hand, but then like the lights come on and Theo's like on the other side of the room. That scene's pretty creepy. But then I was rewatching Black Christmas like a month ago, and I'm pretty sure it's that scene where Claire is looking into the closet
and she sees the eye, and
she doesn't really know. That's later.
Oh, okay.
This is the beginning, the first one, and she's like looking at the closet, and she's like, "Who is that? Who's in there? We can't see anything." And you're like, "Why are you going into the closet? Get away from the closet!" I think it's that scene.
Yeah. God, I'm gonna be thinking about that for the rest of the show now.
Yeah, both of those movies better than this movie.
Yeah. So, in the past, like the last few shows that we've done, we've gone to a well of like real arch and camp, and they've been a lot of fun to talk about. But this is a total shift in tone for us so far, and it was a little jarring. This is I think I could confidently call this like a roughie in the classic sense. It's a pretty brutal movie.
Yeah, it is neither campy nor fun.
Nah, not really. No, there's not a whole lot of fun to be had here. So before we go much further, and you want to know what we're talking about, let me give you a taste.
Maniac.
That's lovely.
You can lock your doors, but you can't lock the madman out of your mind. Maniac. It will tear the life out of you.
So that's it, Maniac.
I'll tell you what, if that movie were a minute and 40 seconds long, it would have been amazing. That's all the best parts of the movie right there.
Yeah. So, well, there's a reason for that, but we'll get into it. So this is 1980 Maniac. So some facts about the show. This was released in 1980. Some other movies released that year: Friday the 13th, The Fog, Saturn III, Anthropophagus, Motel Hell, Nightmare City, which is great. And
it's up there with Anthropophagus.
and the notorious Cannibal Holocaust. So this was directed by William Lustig, who has gone on to do much better movies than this. I would actually say that this was probably like a living classroom for him, because the next movie he made, Vigilante, I'm not a humongous fan of it, but it's a remarkably better movie than Maniac is. So before he was doing this, he was a guy, he's one of these like New York guys. He was working around the same time like Larry Cohen was and Frank
he made Maniac Cop.
You
left out Maniac
Cop, Uncle Sam,
which I watched last night, and that movie is a fucking pile of garbage. It is confusing and really like right wing.
It's really bad. I think he was trying to make trauma without the trauma. It's super, super silly. But before he made this, he was working in New York, producing, directing porn. He did, as far as I know,
which is very common.
Yeah. Like a lot of these guys, it seems like it's a real easy way to get in. You sort of can learn the ropes.
They made more money making porn than they did making these movies.
$30,000 of the $350,000 budget came directly from Lustig's own like earnings from directing porno. But like it's it ain't the greatest work in the world, but like it's definitely a way to sort of get in and learn how to make a movie, because like they'll let anybody make one of those as long as
Wes Craven also made porn.
Yeah. So the road from porn to this, I looked up his porn name is Billy Bag. Yeah, but the road,
that's got to be the best part about making porn, is you get to come up with fun.
You get a funny name. But so the road from porno to Maniac was basically when Dario Argento came to America to shoot the sort of location stuff for Inferno. Lustig was a production manager for the location shots, so he made inroads. He met Argento, and they worked together, and they it sounds like he kind of showed him around and was also his guide. So they had a bit of a repartee. And so it sounds like they had not like a written agreement, but he had sort of talked him into producing Maniac, because Maniac had been like written for a couple of years before this, and they'd been trying to get the money to do it. And
let's use the term written really loosely.
Yeah, we'll say loosely. It was probably written on a napkin,
because I'm still not convinced this has a script.
Yeah. Like based on like how this movie shakes out, it's really kind of unclear how much of it was actually written, because it's very clear that Caroline Munro is in this movie just because her husband kicked in, basically bought her a role for like a couple $100,000. But originally her role was set aside for Daria Nicolodi.
She has a very Dario Nicolodi look to her. Like, she looks a lot like her, and if nothing else, she's got that European look that all like his Argento women have, or like the Hammer women have. Like, it's that blonde, kind of serious, but a little bit like empty.
she's a little vapid, but also she's a fashion photographer, which is like, if you're making a giallo, you have to have a fashion photography scene. So this was all set up. I think Goblin was the original pick for who was going to do the soundtrack, but this is like a weird period for Goblin where the band is kind of coming apart, and it's this like revolving.
Yeah, they weren't really Goblin at that point. They were just Claudia Simonetti.
It was It was Claudio Simonetti. I think Pignatelli was also like the
Yeah.
only other guy who was still sort of like of the classic lineup. But anyways, if you know Lustig now, it's because he owns Blue Underground, and if you're listening to this show, you probably have some of their releases. This movie stars Joe Spinell from basically everything that was produced around New York City between 1975 and 1985.
Yeah, if you need a
he's
guy to
character
sweat
actor.
on camera, he's your dude.
Yeah, he's like I think second only to maybe like
Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito. He's like second to Danny DeVito for like New York guy. He's in Taxi Driver. He's in The Godfather. He's in he's in everything. And the other notable cast member we mentioned her already, Caroline Munro, who is well known from the Hammer movies, Dracula AD 1972. She was a model. She was a Bond girl. She was in The Spy Who Loved Me. And this is the second time that these two have worked together, having previously been in the notoriously terrible Star Wars ripoff Star Crash. And it wouldn't be the last time that they worked together, and they would also show up again in the last horror movie, which I haven't seen. And this movie was also, again, in quotes, written and produced by Joe Spinell. So this movie is something. I used to hold it in really high regard when I first got it. I really, really liked it. And then when I watched it for this, and I was taking notes and really sort of taking it in and kind of familiarizing with the story beats so I could talk about it, I came out the other side with a much milder opinion of it. Like I still like, I think it's fair to say that you did not care for this.
No. What I will tell you is here's how I described it. It's like Taxi Driver if Taxi Driver was made by people with less talent and less money.
Yeah.
But I also think it would be great if it was remade with puppets.
Yeah. So they remade it like 10 years ago.
Oh, that's right.
With Elijah Wood as the Frank Zito character. Have you seen it?
Just scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Have you seen it? Because I have. I reviewed it for Cinema Suicide when it was on YouTube. I really like that one. I really did not care for because mostly
I don't really hold these movies in high regard only because I associate them with a certain kind of horror bro.
Yeah.
That it's just sort of like I don't care if you want to watch a movie where women are getting brutally murdered, like where that's the whole fucking movie. And I know I chose this one, so it's kind of on me, but I associate them with that kind of like real grimy, like, hey, have you seen Driller Killer? Like, yeah, and I don't need to see it again.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to see Maniac remade because there isn't much there to remake in the first place.
Yeah, like, and from what I remember, like, there's definitely like that one's a little bit more conventionally movie. Like, where we go through this, we're gonna find out that there's not a whole lot of movie going on in this movie. The 2012 remake, I hope that's the right year. I think that's right. But like that one also, the reason that I really didn't like that one is because it has this very obnoxious gimmick where you see the movie in first person. So you only see Elijah Wood like in reflections and stuff. So you're seeing it through his eyes. And they even do this thing where like the screen like blacks out for a second every now and then, like he's blinking. It's a pain in the ass.
I'm not gonna lie, that sounds fucking cheesy.
Gaspar Noé did it in.
Okay, that explains why it's fucking cheesy.
He did it in Enter the Void, and that's actually appropriate, and it really works. But in this, I get what they were going for, but I guess you have to like really be into the movie in the first place because, like, I don't know, it wasn't very good.
I'll tell you what. You want to remake it? You remake it with puppets, or better yet, you remake it. And Frank and Anna open a detective agency, or Frank and Anna open a diner in the Bowery. Any of these are better options.
Yeah. So after this movie was made, there was a promotional short that was made for a sequel that they planned on making. Lustig basically washed his hands of this. He was done with it. So it fell to.
But do you think he was like, I'm famous now?
This was 86, so I don't know what he was doing around that time.
Buddy, you can run away from this one.
Yeah, but the short, and you can find it on YouTube. It's called Maniac 2, Mr. Robbie. And it was directed by Buddy Giovinazzo, who has done the similarly vile Combat Shock. And it's not it's not a continuation of this one, because at the end, like, Frank's dead at the end of this, spoiler. But
or is he?
Oh, I know, right? It's just like what was the one that we did with the
fucking it's Carrie all over again. Yeah. It's pieces. It's every one of them.
Right. But it was supposed to be a remake of a movie called The Psychopath, about a children's show host who kills abusive parents. And funding was almost complete. In 1989, they were going to go into production, but production dropped when Spinell died. And have you ever read about how he died? It's fucking sad.
I did read about that, and it was just like, well, maybe it was a heart attack. And I was like, maybe?
No. So about a few years after this, Spinell, like, really kind of burns out and he falls into it. He was like a party hardy type kind of guy. He liked to go out. He liked drinking.
Yeah, I can tell.
Yeah. So he had been out drinking, probably like doing coke and stuff like that. And he went home and he took a shower and he slipped in the shower and he like broke the door and he cut himself. It's kind of like how Steve Baders died, actually. And
that's a sad one.
And he cut himself and he basically bled to death because he's a hemophiliac. And rather than like go and get help, he just like went to bed. And when people came looking for him, they found him that way. So yeah, that is the reason why we don't have anything any Joe Spinell movies past 1989. Yep. This is a real fun movie all around, and we were just starting from the top. So it was produced.
I will say though, I generally did not care for this. There are some things about it that are interesting.
I'm going to get to that because there are lots of there's compositions and scenes that, while I don't think that anything really ties together well to make like a story that's really lasting, there is some really, really well composed like filmmaking in this that really does merit mention.
Yeah, there are moments.
Yeah. So this was produced on a budget of $350,000 and it made over 10 million just at the box office. And like since then, it's obviously, it's selling on video and DVD, Blu-ray and all that. But most of the budget came from Munro's husband. He bought the role for Carolyn, basically. They basically released it regionally to New York first. And they had a really interesting marketing thing going on where inside the theaters that were showing it, they had these TV kiosks outside the theater that showed basically that trailer that we just ran, which has all of the like gory violence that you basically are showing up to see running on a loop. And it became,
and you won't believe this, Vincent Canby was deeply offended by that.
Yeah. I believe. So Gene Siskel is like a noted anti-horror movie, very, very anti-slasher movie in particular. He's
fuck the both.
I know but he was a real crusader for it. And throughout the 80s, this was like his thing. And I believe that this movie and that sort of marketing technique was the reason that he kind of launched into it. If this movie had never been made, like he probably would never have gotten carried away. But he made so much noise about that particular quality of it, where they had the TVs just showing where children were walking by, that other theaters just they scrapped the idea. They wouldn't take them. This was released unrated rather than getting an X rating or cut it for an R rating. And this movie would absolutely have been butchered by the MPAA.
Yeah, what could you cut?
That's the thing, is like if you were to cut any of this movie for violence, you'd end up with like 20...
with a bunch of bizarre monologues.
Yeah, it's like 20 minutes of a movie about an artist with respiratory problems living in like a cramped Brooklyn apartment.
Yeah, it should be said up front. This movie's about 60% gross noises and sweat.
There's a lot of like, yeah, like whenever he gets around, he starts to become like aroused. Most newspapers that would advertise unrated movies, that's the thing. That was one of the reasons why people like would kind of go out of their way to avoid an X or an unrating or going unrated, is because most newspapers in America would not advertise them. But the ones that would still wouldn't touch this movie because of the art on the poster, which is pretty intense, even for like a movie poster at the time. Like Friday the 13th was a contemporary of this movie, and that one's got like a little blood on an illustrated knife. Like this one is a painting of a guy holding a knife at crotch level while holding in the other hand a woman's scalp, and if you look closely, he's got a boner.
For fuck's sake.
So in 1979 there was
You see what I mean about the horror bro thing?
Yeah.
Like, I get who this is for.
Yeah. So in 1979 there was an ad in Variety that reported that this movie would star Nickelodeon when she was still attached, but also Jason Miller from The Exorcist, and Grimbro's favorite
Jason Miller, whose son, I believe, is that annoying kid from all the horror movie 80 movies.
Yeah, from Near Dark.
He's Homer from Near Dark.
And Jason Patrick is also one of his sons.
That's right.
Yeah. And also, this movie was supposed to star Grimbro's favorite Susan Terrell. No idea who she was supposed to play in that movie. I can't even imagine. Because there's not.
I mean, there aren't that many roles in this movie. There's like 3 people.
Yeah, there's like all of the women in the movie get killed. So, yeah, who knows? I mean, maybe there was a draft at a point that had more to it. I don't know. Siskel and Ebert, as we said, hated this movie. Roger Ebert walked out after this.
Yeah, Roger Ebert can eat a bag of dicks. This is the guy who wrote Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. Don't you tell me what's good and bad.
I know. I always come back to that. It's like, you wrote Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, dude. Like, why are you so highfalutin? Like, what's going on in your mind? Anyways,
you're not better than us, okay?
This is a man who got paid to write a review of this movie, and he didn't make it past the Savini scene. He says he walked out after it. There is the score is awesome. I fucking love the music in this movie. It's
the score is probably the best part about it, because I think this is one of Jay Chataway's first scores.
Yeah, and it's so good. I've got notes about like why it's so good, like a little further down, but like the general vibe of it is very buzzy and very nasty. There's all these like interstitial bits that are spooky with like a big like bass riff running through them.
Yeah, there's like atonal drones throughout it that really like kind of amp everything up.
This is like that's the thing. It's like this movie has a very weird sort of like a very intense vein of just despair running front to back, and the score really reflects that. So that's just like this, just a bit of flavor for what we're about to get into. So let's dive in.
Wait a minute, is Frank Zito named after Joseph Zito?
He is in fact named after Joseph Zito. He was.
I saw on my second watch. I thought, I wonder if that's.
Yeah, he was a friend of Lustig's, I believe, and Tom Savini, and probably the movie that Savini did special effects on right after this was on The Prowler, which Zito did.
Which is an infinitely better film than this.
Maybe. I kind of like, I feel like there's like tiers of slasher movies, and like you've got your like, your like S grade tier with all your, Freddy Krueger's and, Jason Voorhees's. And then there's those ones that like, they were very clearly trying to set up like a character, and the movie underperformed. And so they never went back to it, like Cropsy, and the Miner from like My Bloody Valentine, and like that one. I know, but I definitely feel like My Bloody Valentine is in a lower tier of slasher movies, even though
and I will, when we get to it, I will tell you all of the reasons why you were wrong, and you should never say that again.
Yeah. So, yeah, but also, and of note, like that, but the success of The Prowler launched Zito to do. Eventually, he made my favorite Friday the 13th. He made part 4.
The 4th one?
Yeah, that's my absolute favorite. Number 1 with a bullet.
Wow.
Yep.
Even better than the 3rd one.
I don't really like the 3rd one.
Well, you're wrong about that too.
Yeah. If I have to rank them, it's part 4, part 2, part 1, and part 6. And then maybe.
Well, you're just gonna skip over 5 like that, huh?
I think 5 is marginally better than part 8.
5 is my second favorite.
Damn. What is?
Yeah, I go 3, 5, 2, 1, 4, 8, and 7.
God damn. Man, we don't even touch 9 and 10, even though I love Jason X. But
when was the last time you saw it? Because I watched it over the summer, and it is a hard one to get.
It was a long time ago. Probably the last time I saw it was like around the time it came out, and I really enjoyed just how deep they lean into the more ridiculous aspects of it. Yeah, because I mean,
hey everybody, can you tell how much we liked Maniac?
Oh yeah, okay, no fuck. I mean,
it's that good.
Yeah, fuck it. Let's get to it. So, the movies we start out on a windy winter shot of probably like, I don't know, Rockaway Beach or
yeah, they just fucking slingshot you into this movie.
Yeah,
there's no amp up here. We just
yeah, it really does start, and it's not even clear if this is like really happening. So, you hear the Jay Chataway kind of lurking, sneaking part of the score, and there's a dude like watching a couple who's like sleeping on the beach,
but like legit sleeping on the beach.
Right.
They're not just like hanging out or resting. They're like homeless.
This very could easily have been like, hey, like boobs, everybody. Like they really could have, like that's kind of what you're expecting, but like no, they're just sleeping. Like they don't have a home. We're like right immediately. This is we're right in Murder Town. They do the classic like split up where she is like, oh, the fire's dying, go get firewood, and he's like, babe, let me sleep, but he goes and he does it. And while he's away, our killer, whose face is unseen, goes up and sort of like just touches her, and she thinks it's the boyfriend, and then she gets slashed on the throat with a straight razor. And the boyfriend comes back and he sees her and drops the firewood and is like, oh my god. And the killer comes up behind him and gets him with a garrote and like lifts him off the ground, and he's like, you basically watch him die as his feet are kicking and there's blood. This is the Annie kill from Friday the 13th. Yeah. It's a really good, like you could see Savini reuses a lot of his.
Yeah, this is Tom Savini's greatest hits. This whole movie,
it basically is.
You can see a lot of this shit in other stuff.
It's some really good work too. Like this is some of the best stuff he's done. Like 1980 was a real like turning point for him, because like before that, like I love Dawn of the Dead, but a lot of the effects are really janky, and like he really kind of figures it out. It's
because they spent all their money renting that mall.
Oh, yeah.
That sweet mall.
It's a badass mall. I mean, money well spent. But yeah, so like, this place, and right immediately it's super gory. But then we cut to Frank's apartment. He wakes up screaming from a nightmare, presumably
the home of a proper serial killer.
Oh god, yeah. Do you want to describe this place?
This is like if Central Casting did housing, it's that. I think it literally says "kill" on the wall.
Yeah.
Like there's doll heads everywhere. It's just like someone asked a 12-year-old to design an apartment for a murder.
This really reminds me of the kind of Firefly family's affect in the House of a Thousand Corpses, where like it's just all this crap that you would imagine to find in like a murderer's house.
Yeah, like no one has ever even heard of the concept of subtlety.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no Nazi quilts here.
No,
this is all.
But it's kind of obvious. Like one of the central features of the room is he wakes up, and just like in Butcher Baker, there's fucking candles lit all over the place, and he's been sleeping. Fire hazard.
Oh yeah.
Like, come on. But like the main feature is,
it's a good thing he doesn't have a Nazi quilt. That thing would go up in a second.
Yeah, because he's not using like the fine yarn. He's using the stuff that goes up.
This is like 1980. This is 79. This is 79 yarn.
Polyester was huge then.
Yeah.
So this is a direct riff on Psycho, on Hitchcock's Psycho. He's got like a shrine to like a woman who's got a wicked like tough bitch look about her. Like every time you see her, like her hair is all tied up in like like a bandana. She's like smoking a cigarette in this picture.
Yeah, like the implication here is like, this is like his bitch mother. We're gonna go that trope. We're gonna lean into that one a little bit later. But also is like, based on the picture, is your mother also like a model for British Vogue?
That, or is she like a jammer for a roller derby team?
Yeah, like where is this photograph from, and why is it taken 2 weeks before they shot this?
There's some old timey pictures in the apartment, but that photo looks very like modern. So Frank wakes up screaming, and he's in his jammies, and he's like getting ready to go out into the night. And he takes time to take off his pajama shirt. We see his chest is like covered in scars. So, just establishing character stuff. He's been definitely like he's an abused child.
But it doesn't really read that way. It reads more like this comes at a time where like it's that like post-Vietnam. Every movie that gets made is about Vietnam.
Oh yeah, that's.
And I read it as like, oh, veteran. No, I'm wrong.
Interesting.
On that one.
Yeah, because also he does wear like an army jacket throughout. Yeah. But yeah, so he puts on all of his winter stuff because it's cold in New York, and takes off into the night. And so we get an establishing shot of Times Square, 1980. Which,
hey, you know what city looks like shit in this movie?
I love this. This is my absolute favorite kind of depiction of New York. This Ed Koch era is so awesome, and like I think it's when I don't know what it is. I have no idea why this is so attractive to me, because it really is a shit city at this time.
Rudy Giuliani did everything to destroy whatever kind of vibe that the city had.
Oh,
so
right.
To see it in its glory is kind of interesting, even though its glory is fucking disgusting.
Right, and like this was a time when like everybody who made a movie in New York was essentially wanted you to think that the entire city, top to bottom, and all the boroughs were Times Square and 42nd Street, and that's it. And there's nothing else. It's just hookers and porno theaters, front to back. It's so grimy, and he really, really leans into the look for this movie. And also in the next one. The next one's basically the next movie he made was Vigilante, which is just a Death Wish ripoff. But yeah, so there's plenty of like getting a look at it. Like Taxi Driver definitely had a lot to do with the vibe of this movie. It certainly had a real like heavy influence. I honestly, I think that Taxi Driver influenced a lot of movies made in New York at the time, because everybody who did it this way. Like every time you see New York City, even when Fulci did it in New York Ripper, like this is all they want you to know about New York, is that it sucks. It's just full of pimps. And
because in New York Ripper they were like, well, we're only here to do establishing shots. Where should we go? How about the disgusting piers?
Yeah. So yeah, but I love it. It's central to so many of my favorite movies, and it's weird that so many of them take place in New York in the 1970s and the early 80s.
Well, and I would posit this: when we were growing up, we liked New York hardcore and a lot of grimy horror movies that were shot in New York. So this is the aesthetic we saw, and then when we got there, what we got was Rudy Giuliani's.
It was all gone by the time we got there. I remember we did go
it's
through.
Sort of like if I were to weave stories about Boston in the 90s, and then someone came over now.
Oh my God, I know. Like if we talk
and
about
they'd be like, what is this? And I'd be like, I don't know, Harvard?
Yeah. Like, let me take you down to Kenmore, and we'll show you the Rat, and then we get there and it's a fucking Starbucks.
It's like a CVS, I think.
But so Frank is just wandering the streets, and he meets two hookers who are talking about the ultimate, and it's never explained.
You know what else is not? The French and regular. And I want to know.
Yeah,
because one of them says, "I'll give you the French and regular," and I thought, what is that?
Yeah,
I want to know what that is.
All of it. She rails out this menu to him that's like $25 will get you regular, 50 is French and regular, 75 is I'll take you around the world, and for 100 you get the ultimate. And like moments before he enters the shot, the two women are talking about like some John who had a weird idea of what the ultimate is. And I'm sitting here watching this thinking, I've got some pretty weird ideas about what the ultimate is because I don't know what the ultimate is. I'm
a pervert. I like hilarious things. Tell me.
I have no idea. Like, tell me what the fucking ultimate is. But
it's like when someone starts telling you a story and then they're like, never mind.
you get the idea. But yeah, so he takes her up on the offer, and they go into this just fucking Fleabag motel. And
I'll tell you what, you know what else would have made a better movie? Whatever's happening at that front desk.
Oh, I know, it's hilarious. And I watched it with headphones on, and the soundtrack of that scene is really, really weird because there's all sorts of noise in the background. Why did
you watch a movie with headphones?
Because like I had to watch it
because you have children and it's gross.
Basically, like nobody wants to watch my shit in this house, and so it's just I gotta watch it sometime.
I had another adult in the room who was clearly uncomfortable with this film.
Yeah. But the hotel porter, that's Lustig. That's his like cameo for the movie. And,
that's his Alfred Hitchcock moment.
Yeah. So that's why I was thinking like this is definitely like this is Psycho. He's trying to do like a sleazy, grimy version of Hitchcock, and he's got to put himself in the movie. But also probably it's one less actor to pay.
Yeah.
But
I mean, to call any of these people actors is really generous.
I actually have a really, really I'm actually very kind to the cast, with one exception in terms of acting. But like this scene is really funny because he charges him like $25 for the room, and then he's like, $5 will get you a color TV.
And he pays for the TV.
He pays for the TV. We're gonna be watching like Monday Night Football or something.
What are you gonna watch TV? Why are you paying extra money?
Yeah, and he rolls it out.
$5 in 1980. That's like $1980. That's like $400.
This is not a cheap date, and and then there's like a really, really exorbitant tax on top of it, which it's New York. It makes sense. But they go into the room, and it's just this like really awkward exchange between Frank and the prostitute. There's not a whole lot going on. He talks to her. He has her like pose like the girls in the magazine.
Now I gotta wonder: do they think what she's doing is this supposed to be sexy? Because it is deeply silly.
It's pretty ridiculous, yeah. But I probably not. Like, I don't know how much of this you're actually supposed to take seriously.
She reminded me of Donna Pascal from Saturday Night Fever.
Oh, yeah.
Like, yeah, she's given, like, really, really heavy Donna Pascal vibes.
It's the leotard, really.
It probably is, I think.
Yeah, but she but basically, like, they fool around for a little bit, and then he strangles her. But while he's doing it, I've watched this movie numerous times in the past. I've never noticed this, but the actress switches.
Yes,
in the shots to his mother, and
to his very Italian-looking mother.
Yeah, I've never. Well, I mean, yeah, it's New York, but I've never noticed that. This is the first time I've noticed it. I was like, huh. All right.
You know what the first thing I noticed in this scene was? His face looks like a honey-baked ham.
He
is shiny and kind of glazed looking.
He
glistens. Summer squash.
He glistens through the entire movie. It's so gross. But yeah, this is the thing where as he's doing it, they like cut to his perspective, then her perspective, and so like you see her getting strangled, and then you see him strangling her, but it's this like super, super tight. Everybody's seen the shots, super tight close-ups on his like sweaty, bloated face as he's doing this.
But that's kind of like this. So this kind of framing is what makes these scenes effective, is that they're constantly on top of each other. Like every character is on top of each other most of the movie. And because of that, the camera is also on top of them. So everything feels claustrophobic.
It's yeah. There's definitely a lot of
it just feels dirty and dangerous, and everything is just like, I don't like what I'm looking at, and I want to get away, but the camera never lets you get away.
Yeah. It stays right in there. And I mean, it's probably just a matter of that room was probably not very big, because that was a real like hotel room in Manhattan somewhere.
Oh yeah, well the thing you forgot to mention is that this movie is basically shot like guerrilla filmmaking. Like they didn't pay for anything.
Oh yeah,
they just shot all this stuff like on the fly wherever they were, including the shotgun scene.
The shotgun scene, I actually have notes about that, but yeah, like everything that they did, like they did basically with a car waiting like right next to them so they could throw their shit into it and just take off.
Which I would imagine this is probably where that kind of porn filmmaking comes in handy, because as I learned a long time ago when I was interviewing a lot of these guys that used to make porn movies, is because porn was illegal, when they were making it, they would have to like go through, like jump through all these hoops to like, someone would call on a payphone, and then like they'd tell you where to be, and then like you'd go and wait at another location. Like it's all this weird coordination because what you're doing is against the law.
Yeah.
And so they learned how to film in this really kind of like guerrilla kind of ninja filmmaking. So I'd imagine it's a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So Frank has a quirk. And like he apparently Spinell did a lot of like reading about serial killers while he was sort of prepping this. And so like obviously he came upon how like some of them take trophies, and so Frank's trophy is he always takes the woman's scalp, and so we get this nasty close up of him cutting the top of her head off with a box cutter. And it's gross, man. Like it really works. Like I said, like this is really, really like this is A+ Tom Savini special effects.
I bet in 1980, if you wanted to do research about serial killers, like you had to
go to the library.
Real grimy things.
Yeah.
And I say that as someone who writes about serial killers for a living. Like, I can't imagine what it was like in 1980 to be like, hey, I'm looking for books about this.
Oh yeah, like no, because I used to go and buy like true crime books, like way like when people went to bookstores to buy books, and it's like if you go now, like it's a fucking industry, but like back then it was like you would go to any given bookstore and there was like 6 books and 3 of them were about Ted Bundy. So like you had to jump through hoops to like really learn about this stuff, for sure. But we're done with this scene, and it cuts to Frank going back home, and he's got a mannequin with him.
But for a minute, I was like, "Wait, did he leave the hotel with her in a bag?" Because that's real suspicious.
That's kind of what you're supposed to think. I suspect, because like it definitely looks like he's carrying a body.
And that is also when I realized this is a Christmas movie.
Yes, it is. It's set around Christmas. Because she says, like, Christmas shopping, Mr. Zito?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Christmas movie? Maniac.
Yeah. He goes in, he pulls the mannequin out of the plastic, and what we find out is what he's been doing all this time is he takes the scalp and he takes the clothes and he dresses up the mannequin, and he takes the scalp and he puts it on top of the mannequin and he nails it to the mannequin with a fucking
This is some
nail.
real lazy serial killer shit too. Like if this is your whole deal, you're going to be putting a little more effort into this. However, yeah. I will say this scene is very effective. This monologue that he's doing he's really doing something.
See, okay, so this is some of like these are just some of the thoughts I have about this movie. Like, I think that the acting in this movie, particularly Spinell's monologues, are cool. Like, I think that they're good. They're delivered very well. And I think
there's some variation in them, but I think this one in particular is very good because you can tell that he's improvising a lot of it.
You can't really tell, and I think it's on purpose. And I think they switch the perspective in the monologue on purpose to kind of trip you up, because he does it in this kind of feminine affect. And so it sounds like he's talking as his mother. So he's talking to himself as his mother, but sometimes he'll say things like it's him talking to his mother. It's really hard to nail down. I think they do it on purpose, but I
think that felt a little sloppy to me, but I feel like this particular monologue is very good in that like everything is working together. The cinematography is working, the music is working, and whatever he's improvising, because you can tell he's improvising. Nobody wrote that.
Oh yeah,
because it's a dumb monologue, but it works in the moment really well.
It's feverish. It's got this weird, like the tone is very strange.
There's a frenetic energy to whatever he's doing, where it's like he's got his fucking sweaty ham face and he's ranting about nothing, and there's like the weird drone music. It's like it all just kind of comes together in this moment. That's like I can see that they had something in mind that could have been really cool. It just seems like they rushed it to completion.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if it were written, if it had a little bit more structure, and as we'll see, like the next few scenes, like it's just murder after murder after murder, and there's not a lot of character. There's a remarkable lack of movie in this movie. That's the thing that really
get me Paul Schrader, please.
So
actually,
like
don't.
He delivers this monologue, and then he immediately goes out for another kill, and this time what we see is like it's a lot of what you see in a lot of these slasher movies is like hands doing things. In this time he's like disassembling like a rifle while wheezing.
Also kind of a cool moment.
Yeah,
it's cheesy as hell,
that's
but
the thing.
I kind of think it's cool.
When this movie works, it fucking works. He's also wheezing while eating Cracker Jacks, which I love. I love the Cracker Jack detail. And
this movie brought to you by Cracker Jacks, believe it or not.
Oh yeah, and they were definitely on board with everything that the movie is about. Cracker Jacks is really into murdering women. But we get some awesome aerial night footage. This was all B-roll from Inferno that he just had laying around.
Generous.
Yeah. So let's see. So this is the famous, like this is probably like the crown jewel of the whole movie.
Yeah.
This is the scene where he.
I feel like this is the reason why they made this movie.
Probably like from what it sounds like, the kill scenes were not terribly well defined. Like it was basically like the script just said like Frank goes out and kills another woman, and
which is weird because I kind of got the impression they built this whole movie around those ideas. Like I felt like Tom Savini was like, "Hey guys, I've got a bunch of ideas," and they were like, "Okay."
Well, yeah. Like I think he was really an important part of the creative process because like without him, like if it wasn't him, if it were somebody else, I don't know if the violence would have been so effective. But like this is definitely like the central scene. I think it's the best kill in the movie, but there's a scene coming up that I think is actually way better. But this is my favorite kill where Zito's out there and he like pulls up to like a discotheque and is just stalking these two people. He follows them out to the Verrazano Bridge, where they're just in the front seat, like, and it's Tom Savini and he's credited as Disco Boy.
I'll tell you what, my note says, I bet Tom Savini loved the 80s.
Oh my God, he had to have. He was a handsome dude.
I mean, look at that mustache.
That mustache
is everything.
It is the fucking best. And it takes up like 2/3 of the shot. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is
and I think he still has it.
Oh sure, yeah. He would look weird.
I mean, if you loved the 80s, would you get rid of that mustache?
Fuck no. Hell no. But I mean, he's looking so good. Yeah, and it's him just kind of like wooing a woman who it sounds like he stole her from her boyfriend or something.
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of improvised dialogue here because it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, but
like, is she a sex worker, or
nope.
is she just on a date with another guy? Because at first she's kind of like, "Oh, I gotta get back to my boyfriend." He's like, "Oh, do you?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "Ah, no, I don't."
Yeah. So like they start fooling around, and Frank is like out creeping. He's got his gun, and things are getting like.
This is where you get the Son of Sam.
Right, like this was very clearly patterned after Son of Sam, which must have been wild at the time because like that was
because it's not that long.
It was only 3 years after when they produced it. It was only 2 years after the Son of Sam killings, if that. And like
because this scene is that moment is really creepy when he's sort of peering in the window.
I know, but like seriously, like that must have been like very, very intense and like because it was fresh in everybody's mind. And that killing spree kept really held the city hostage. Like it's crazy how New York reacted to those murders, and it wasn't even in Manhattan. That was all taking place in like Queens and shit. But yeah, so. she sees Frank like basically like perving in the window, and they get back into the front seat and start to take off. And when the lights come on, there's like all that mist and fog, and he sort of like emerges from the fog and like leaps up on the hood of the car and shoots.
But in that slow motion moment, like they don't use a lot of special effects. Like, I mean, obviously they use practical effects, but like in camera stuff, they don't do a lot of that. And that moment where he sort of leaps up, because first of all, I'm like, that man cannot move like that. But he does in his sort of sweaty ham way, leaps up on like a superhero onto the whole thing fucking works.
It's great. He crouches down and just in slow motion shoots the Savini right in the face, and this kill is fucking gnarly because it's like all in slow mo, and it's captured from like 5 angles, and you see the head just come apart. And they shot it with live ammo.
Yeah, my notes just says that shotgun scene. Oh my god, that shotgun scene.
Yeah, it's a head explosion like that's on par with like Scanners, like.
And you can tell it's a dummy. Like it looks like plasticky rubbery Tom Savini, which is why it's good and not fucking CGI.
Yeah, like I freeze framed it to take so I could really admire the dummy. The dummy looks a lot like him. But yeah, like apparently like they stuffed the head with like fake blood and food from like that they had left over from craft services, and then they like you said, he loaded it with it looks like a slug, like not buckshot, and shot him right in the head, which and Savini delivered the shot, which must have been fucking crazy as hell, shooting at the likeness of yourself. And the shot goes on forever, like you see
it is a really long moment.
Yeah. And so then he comes in and he menaces the girl, and it's so terrifying. Like the way that,
and that's after she gets like a bucket of blood thrown in her face.
They really do hose her, and he spends like a good 30 seconds to like a minute just like menacing her with the gun before the gun goes off. But this is a perfect opportunity for me to tell my Tom Savini story, because this all happened like the day after I watched Maniac. And I know I've told you some of this, but there's a lot to this story that I have not really told anybody, because it gets really fucking weird. So like in 1999, I was living in Orlando while I was going to school, and there was some friends of mine told me that there was like a big collectibles show going to the convention center on International Drive. And I was like, oh shit, this sounds cool. They're like, yeah, it's got like retro toys and people selling like bootleg videos, which really caught my attention. And so I scraped together some cash for the admission and to like buy a couple of bootlegs. And I went over, and I got there before my friends did. And so I was just like wandering around, like taking it in, finding out where all the bootleg dealers were. And I bought a couple of tapes, and then I'm just killing time, and I go to the back of the con, and there's like the celebrity area where they're like doing autograph signings, and it was a lot of people who were making the circuit. Like this was before it really kind of turned into the industry that it is now. And there was like a half a dozen people who sort of like made the rounds, and it was like Anthony Daniels was there. He's the guy in the C-3PO costume. One of the guys from Battlestar Galactica was there. Dr. Smith, Ron Palillo was there.
Oh, television's Horseshack.
Yeah, and he was, and the thing about this was these people had lines for miles. It was crazy, and
Wait, Horseshack had a line?
Like you wouldn't believe. He was,
I guess I would want Horseshack's.
And I remember he was, dude. I was like, I've got a few bucks left, but like at the time, I also didn't realize that like there was a lot of money exchanging hands in this. Like as we'll find out, like there was etiquette to this that I was not aware of. But like, yeah, Horseshack was like standing.
Well, thank God you didn't embarrass yourself in front of queer horror icon Horseshack.
But yeah, like he was like standing on the table and like monologuing and stuff. Like he was really like doing it. The crowd was eating it up. Like they had lines like crazy. And I look to my right, and sitting at a table right next to me is Tom Savini, and there's like the little wall behind him that has like the little cards. Says Tom Savini, has all of these like photos on him with it's like pictures of him like putting on the Jason makeup from Friday, and like him in the the Blade costume from Dawn of the Dead and stuff. And they were all like wicked expensive, like $50, $60. The Dawn of the Dead one was like $100. And he's just sitting there, and I look around and I'm like freaking out because I'm like, holy shit, like this is Tom Savini, like right there. And so I look around to like make sure, and it was weird because he had no line at all. And I looked around to like make sure that like I wasn't about to just like step in front of somebody. And so I turn and I
gotta be honest, this all sounds very overwhelming.
It was weird. And so I turn and I just the night before had watched Maniac. And so I wasn't crazy. I don't get starstruck. I'm not like that at all. And I was just like, I was like, Mr. Savini, my name is Bryan. I'm a humongous fan of yours. I was watching Maniac last night, and I like your work has really, really touched me. And I wanted to, just say thanks. And I stuck out my hand, as if to shake his, and he looks at my hand and he folds his arms and sits back in his chair and goes, yeah. And
then you said, well, I guess I can see why you don't have much of a line, sir.
Right. Like a lot kind of came into focus. Cause like, here's the thing. All my life, I had heard about this guy through like the pages of like Fango and stuff. And so the impression that I've always had and the mental image was this guy is the sweetheart that everybody makes him out to be. And so I kind of expected just to have like this moment. And to have this happen, I was like, what the fuck just happened? And so like I sheepishly retract my hand and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll see you later. And I walked away and I got like 10 steps away and I was like, wait a second. And so I turn around and he is still fucking glaring at me.
Did you turn around and you're like, hey, fuck you, Tom Savini.
I honestly, I should have. But like I go back and eventually I find my friends and I go, Tom Savini just fucking big timed me. And they were like, who's Tom Savini? And I'm like,
exactly.
And I go, Dust Till Dawn, the guy with the penis gun. And they're like, oh, right. And so we're walking around and I take him back that way. And I'm like, and to basically show him. And I say, and I look and he fucking sees me before I see him and locks eyes with me, like fucking laser eyes. And and so I was just like, that's the guy. And they were like, oh, okay. And so end of story. I go home, and I get on with it and I start Cinema Suicide. And about a year after it's been going, I'm just kind of hard up for something to write about. I haven't seen anything really worth talking about. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to tell the Tom Savini story. And so I wrote an article called Tom Savini is a Dick. And
it's a subtle title.
Right. And I just,
what's this one about?
And I tell the story as I told you. And this is the moment when the website really kind of blew up because it caught fire in a way that I wasn't expecting. And about 3 years later, like there are 400 comments on that article, and a solid half of them are people telling very similar stories. Like there was a guy who did a little bit of writing for me, who told a story about how a friend of his met him at just a show like that, but he was expecting him to be there, and so he was a guy who was really trying to make it and wanted to do special effects, and so he had a book with all of his it was a portfolio essentially, and he showed it to Tom, who violently paged through it in such a way that he tore pages out of it by accident and stuff before not tossing, throwing it back at the guy, and apparently this dude just kind of gave up on his dream because of this meeting. But and then at another show at Rocket Shock up here, the Day of the Dead cast was there, and so Joe Pilato was there, and Laurie Cardeal and Gary Clark, and I was in line for Joe Pilato, who was wasted, but
see that
everybody at those things is drunk. I met Michael Rooker at the same thing. I had him sign my
Look, if I was at one of those things, I'd be drunk too.
What else are you going to do? You got to deal with people all day. Rooker was also super, super drunk. I could smell it on him. But Pilato was the exact opposite of Savini.
Or knockoff Michael Rooker.
Maybe. Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, he was, he was seated with the other actors from the movie. So he kept standing up and doing scenes with them from the movie, which I fucking loved.
And the whole time, Galen Ross just wanted to go home.
Oh, she was there.
She's from Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, she was there, but she was there the year before this. But so I go up and he's like, he's like, basically his handwriting is all over my Day of the Dead DVD because he just can't keep it together. But at one point, he says like, I gotta leave room so you can get like, George and Tom's signatures on this. And I was like, don't worry about Tom. And he's like, oh, where's the story there? And so I told him the story, and Joe's wife was with him. And as soon as I finished, she goes, he's like that with everybody. He's really rude. And Joe goes, fuck him. Fuck him, fuck him, fuck him. Don't tell him I said that, but fuck him. And so I felt a little bit better about that. But like years go by and that article just is like super popular. It's like one of the top, I think it's like the second most popular article on the website. The first one was a fucking interview with Zach Baggins.
Yeah, because now 500 people feel validated.
Yeah, and so at one point there is a comment from somebody because it was, you can just put whatever name in the thing, and so it's it comes in and it says Tom Savini, and the body of the comment is just like, these are lies and this is slander and how dare you. And I was my reply to it was, nice try, Tom. So the way that this story shakes out, I'm pretty sure that was really Tom Savini, because eventually, and I find this out by searching Tom Savini on Google, that article, if you just look up Tom Savini, it's not there anymore. The website doesn't exist, but that article ranked. There was, if you look up Tom Savini, you got his IMDb page, you got his Wikipedia article, you got his personal website, you got his school's website, and the one below that was Tom Savini is a dick. So anybody who just looked up Tom Savini on Google found that article. It was just, and like, I was really good with like search engine optimization. Like, so it just happened that I was like ranking on the first page of results for Tom Savini. So Christmas Eve, 2011, I log in, I was still using Facebook at the time, and I log in to the Cinema Suicide like Facebook group that I had, and there is a new DM from Tom Savini official, which was like his real actual curated like Facebook page, and it's from him, and it's a irate message that's like, this article is killing my business. I have people asking questions like, how dare you? This is, you're killing my good name. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, wait a second. You're Tom Savini. I'm just some fucking guy on the internet. And so he and I, for the next hour, this is Christmas Eve, have this like basically a halfway civil, halfway argument where he's just like, this is bullshit. How dare you? How can you do this to me? Don't you know who I am? And I'm just like, look, dude, he wanted me to take the article down. And I told him, I was like, you're crazy if you think I'm doing that. But get back to me after the holidays, and we'll do like a YouTube thing, and we'll do like an interview, and we can kind of clear the air. And he
also, get a fucking life, Tom Savini. It's Christmas.
This gets weirder, if you can believe it. So anyways, Christmas goes by, the holidays pass, and he doesn't get back to me. Big surprise. I didn't expect him to. But 2 years later, so this article, so that comment that I suspect was his, dropped in like 2010. This was like 2011 Christmas Eve. 2 years later, in 2013, I'm doing the YouTube show, and a friend of mine says, you got to see this. And he sends me a link to a video of Tom at like Texas Frightmare Weekend addressing an audience. And it's all the usual stuff that he talks about. But in the middle of it, and this is like an hour-long panel that he was doing, but in the middle of it, he starts to talk about this incident he had with a woman at some horror con who she was talking to him, and then he turned to like speak to one of his assistants or something like that, and she misunderstood him or misheard him and was offended, and then went home and wrote an article called Tom Savini is a Dick. So he was like addressing his haters at this thing. And
classy.
Yeah. And so like I did another article
Let's talk about power differences.
Yeah, I did another thing. I did a video called "I'm Sorry I Hurt Your Feelings, Tom Savini," and that was it. I have not heard of it about it since, but I wonder for exactly how long had I been living in this guy's head. It must have driven him insane.
Also, like, I mean, how about instead of responding to every single criticism on the internet, just stop being such an asshole?
That was the thing. Well, that was one of the things that I actually said. He was like, these are all lies and it's vicious and this is like this is just a hit piece. And I was like, look at those comments. There's like,
also, it's not a hit piece. You were a jerk.
That's the thing. As I said, like, not a word of that is false. Otherwise, you could have like leveraged a lawsuit against me or something. Like if a part of this is true. But anyways, Tom Savini is kind of a jerk. But for like, there was like every 2 comments about what an asshole he was, there was always somebody going like, I met him at a show and he was like the sweetest guy, or like he bought me dinner, or a thing. And like Jetpack Comics, like the guy who owns that place, ran into him and George Romero in an elevator at some comic convention, and they just had like a bunch of like props and shit from the movies, and they just gave him a leg from Day of the Dead and like signed it and stuff. That leg is still like behind the counter at that shop to this day. So maybe he's like bipolar or something. You gotta catch him on a good day, because sometimes it does sound like he's a wicked sweetheart. But it sounds like you got to be like an industry person for him to be
I don't
nice
know.
to
I
you.
mean, the internet's a fucking cesspool. And I work on the fringes of the entertainment industry. And even I have shit about me on the internet. And I'm like, you know what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to look it up. I'm not going to fucking Reddit pages about me. I don't give a shit. I don't want to know what it says. Tom Savini is obviously the opposite. He wants to know all of it, and I guarantee you that is a bad idea.
Yeah. Like, that's the thing. Don't read your reviews. Don't read.
Yeah, don't read the fucking comments section, Tom Savini. It's like the #1 rule of interneting.
Yeah. But anyways, I love to tell that story, and the way that it just evolved over time. Because originally, I would tell anybody who'd be like, "Oh yeah, I love horror movies, and Tom Savini's the greatest." I'd be like, "Well, hang on, let me tell you about the time I met him in Florida." But then, like, as it got weirder, it just kept evolving and getting stranger over time. And the fact that, like,
maybe I'd stop talking about it if it weren't so goddamn crazy.
It's fucking hilarious.
You're only making it weirder, Tom.
And the way that he handled it just made me feel very vindicated in the end. Because there were times where I was like, well, maybe I'm being a little mean. But nah.
Nope.
No. So back to Maniac. Speaking of Maniacs.
Yeah. Movie we liked.
Yeah. More monologuing. We get more monologue. So after
this is my second favorite monologue, actually. It might be tied for my first. Yeah. Where he has on this is the one where he has the ridiculous
glasses.
Oh wait, no, that's later. That's later.
Yeah, that's after
he's brushing his hair.
This is the one where he brushes his hair. It's so fucking funny. Like, he could have done a one-man show where he's like a serial killer. I would go to it every night.
What it is.
Yeah.
At the end, he's brushing his hair. At the end, he's like, "You're mine forever now," and I'm so happy. That's what I was just like, this
you know what?
Something.
You know what? This movie really is. If you boil it down, this movie is seriously like an off Broadway one-man show. It's crazy. But so this is the thing. Like, up to this point, we are about a half hour into this 90-minute movie, and it has been nothing but 3 very graphic murder scenes, and we still have 1 more to go before it even gets into anything approaching a story. And so I can maybe see why critics were mean to it upon release. Most of them were just offended by the violence, which, like, yeah, but like, what do you expect? It's a fucking
horror. A lot of them are holdovers from like. So you get a lot of like so Vincent Canby, I think, was like a 70s. He wrote for New York Times until like the late 80s, early 90s, maybe.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are holdovers from like the 60s and early 70s, where this is just not proper cinema.
Yeah. I mean, that's really these guys must have fucking hated the whole 42nd Street scene. Like, cause it's just like they're, and it's not like these movies were encroaching upon their territory.
I wonder what they thought of Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Right. Fuck these guys. Bunch of snobs. But yeah, so it's up to this point, it's just 4 brutal murders carried out by a whimpering madman. And this is the part.
And
This
then
is
goes home and brushes his hair and
and then
talks to himself.
and then he cuffs himself to one of the mannequins before going to
Like, Andy Milligan, eat your heart out.
Oh my God, I know. This, and then this was the next scene kind of is the one that sort of establishes Carolyn Monroe's character Anna, where it starts out in a park and it's these two kids swinging.
Was this the nurse thing?
The nurse is after this.
Okay.
So it's sort of setting it up like, oh, he's going to kill these kids or something like that, but like he doesn't. But it's really funny because these kids are like super New York, where they
they are. And this is like the beginning of Sleepaway Camp, where it's like you cannot have a more New York accent.
Oh my God, that was the most Long Island movie ever made. But like this is the one where the kid's like, hey, let's go ride our bikes, and she goes, hey, my mother said I can't leave the park.
She's like 8 years old.
Yep. But they
kind of like Harvey Keitel from Taxi Driver.
Yeah, my mother said I can't leave the park. So they go off, and he does that. And so Carolyn Monroe's character Anna, she's a photographer. She's taking pictures of people. She takes a picture of Zito menacing this little girl, and then he sort of like familiarizes himself with her like her address because it's on like a note on her bag that he sees. But then we cut to the nurse scene. And so
and these are clearly just like two friends of the family, because these two are not actors.
No, they're actually all of the victims in the movie were actresses from like the porno movies that Lustig would made. And I actually think they're not that bad, because when
these two are not good.
They're not great, but like
the other ones are. Donna Pascal's great. The other two,
the blonde nurse in this scene, like that. This scene, this is basically another stalk and slash scene where
they're really trying this time, and it just doesn't pay off.
I love this. This is like my favorite scene in the whole movie because it is extremely intense.
Well, so you're supposed to. So it kind of ruins the illusion, because you're supposed to think that she's alone in this train station,
but you can see the people on.
Clearly, see other people.
You can see the people on the platform. Yeah, like when the train car is rolling away, because they set it up like she's the only one in there other than Frank. But like, yeah, as the train car pulls away, there's like a dozen people on the platform with her. But he's kind of chasing her around the subway station. She hides in a bathroom. For some reason, I remember this scene being like, at one point he's across the platform from her, and she starts to move, and like he like turns and like runs or something, but it's not there. Maybe I'm imagining things, but like
your version sounds better than their version.
Because the thing is, like, I think this scene is extremely intense, because like it's like we go back to this, the camera is right in her face, and it's very, very tight and close, because she goes into a men's room, which, good God, that must have been fucking vile.
Okay, so it is a men's room, because my first thought was, there's no way this is a woman's room.
No, it's a men's room. Because actually, when he finally sort of like gets savvy to where she went, he like looks at it, says like man on the door. He goes, and she's hiding in one of the stalls, and it's like, could he not see her feet or something?
Yeah, also not being quiet at all.
Oh no, she's like whimpering and
she's
shivering.
Also making gross noises and sweating like everybody else.
Yeah, but like I'd say she has a good reason. In Frank's case, it's just because he's walking around.
Yeah, it's the meat sweats.
But yeah, I love this scene. Like, it's super, super tense, and the music in this is the thing. Yeah. This is really where I want to sort of address the music, because whenever there's a kill scene, like there's a track that accompanies just that scene. It's not like it's a motif that keeps getting used over again. Like each one kind of has its own character, and like this one,
he does have a theme that does get used throughout this a lot, but he uses it in really interesting ways.
Yeah, like in this one, it keeps like tightening and tightening and tightening, and like the tone and the timbre and the like even the pitch of the notes keeps like escalating and escalating and escalating. Yep. And it's just this like hiss and whine that goes through the whole thing. It's so good. Like, I really, really love, like, this movie would be nothing without the music.
Yeah, Jay Chataway did so he did this, he did Maniac Cop 1 and 2, which are even better than this one, and then he did Silver Bullet, which is not as good but still pretty good. And then after that, he started doing a lot of TV, and he's doing bigger name stuff like Star Trek Voyager and shit like that. And he like drops off and doesn't do anything that interesting ever again.
That's weird. I wonder what happened. Like, did he die or something?
No, he still does shit.
Oh.
Like, he still does music, but it's like he doesn't have the freedom to do cool shit anymore because he's working for television.
Oh, yeah.
So anything he's done since then, I'm kind of like, eh.
Yeah. But yeah, like this is definitely in John Carpenter vein where it was just like it's simplicity out of necessity. Like they didn't have money for like a proper soundtrack. And so they got this guy who
he had just come out of school when I think he made this one.
Yeah. And it's so good. It's just so intense and like it really suits the scenery. Because like this movie has this just like bad speed vibe to it where like everything is just like chattery and jittery and like they do a lot with editing where they do these like staggered zooms on faces and stuff to really kind of like heighten the tension. Like I think they do it in this one where it like zooms in on his face a couple of times, but it kind of goes like 1, 2, 3 as it gets closer and closer. Very, very effective filmmaking.
Yeah, you never feel comfortable watching this movie.
Yeah, it feels dangerous. Like it feels like a movie that was made by like drug addicts or something. It's fucking crazy. But yeah, Jay Chataway, so good. Like, and I love this score in particular. But now the movie slows down a little bit.
Because now they're like, all right, I guess we'll try.
Yeah, and so this is where Frank meets Anna, and
you forgot he kills the nurse by stabbing her with a bayonet.
With a bayonet. Yeah. I mean, at this point, it's not really worth talking about. But
he kills another lady. Surprise.
But yeah, so they meet, and it's kind of weird because he just kind of shows up at her apartment.
He shows up. Now, listen, if anybody is listening to this or does listen to this, ladies, this is a lesson in the reddest of flags.
Holy shit, I've got red flags written down in my notes like all over the place. And Anna misses them every single time.
Like, dude shows up at your door, kind of forces his way in, and then is like, hey, mind if I look around?
Yeah. Oh,
what?
Yeah. Oh, I'm an artist too, which is a weird detail, but
yeah.
But
is he wrong? I don't know.
I suppose
subjective.
I suppose it explains all the crap at his apartment.
Yeah.
But but she's a photographer and she just does like portraiture and like fashion and stuff like that. But the way that they meet is just he comes to her apartment and they have a conversation. And this is beautiful Carolyn Munro and this is schlubby Joe Spinell.
She is a fucking Bond girl, and we're supposed to believe that a date over Clams Casino is gonna win her over.
Clams Casino. Yeah,
he describes it. I was like, "This is a fucking worst date I've ever had. I would die."
It's like 1 degree up from Long John Silver's. It's.
I know this place in New Jersey. Good Clams Casino. Get the fuck out of my apartment.
But
How dare you?
For some reason, she's the fucking worst in this movie. Like I find the like we've said, I find the actresses like, and these are all like porn performers. I think that they have there's a sort of natural way about their delivery for most of them. I think that they are very like as conventional actresses go. I think he could have done a lot worse. And then she
thinks she's in another movie.
And then Carolyn Munro comes in, and this might as well have been a Hammer movie to her.
She thinks she's in a Hammer movie, and you can tell by the very end of it.
She's like super loud and bubbly and vacant. She's so vapid and annoying.
Yeah.
And this is the part that I don't really understand because like his method up to this point has been like he just picks a woman on the street, follows her and kills her. What's with the courting here? Because like this, and I understand that like they needed to sort of like add a little bit of meat for her because her husband essentially paid for the movie, but like usually he just kills them. And there's this like very earnest attempt at a relationship here that just goes swimmingly, where like the most New York dude you've ever seen.
Yeah, like he shows up to her apartment looking like a fucking bottom shelf Ron Jeremy, invites her out for Clams Casino in New Jersey, and the Bond girl is taken with him.
She finds him so charming. I don't, but hey, there you go.
Yeah, he looks like a fucking Christmas ham.
And
That's why you don't.
and they go right to dinner. Like, it's not like, hey, okay, so I'll see you on Friday or something like that. Like, they leave from her apartment to go to Clam's Casino.
Yeah, look, I don't want to blame the victim here, but come on, man.
This guy. And then at dinner, they're having a normal conversation, and then he tells her, "You're the most beautiful girl I've seen since my mother."
And then he pulls out a loose photograph of his mother that he just keeps in his jacket.
Totally consistent with the character. Her reaction to that should have been, "I'll see you later."
I gotta call a cab.
Yeah.
I gotta burn this restaurant to the ground and leave.
Yeah. So, but they're going along, and she is just so accommodating and so caught up in his charm. And they set it up. They get together again
I do kind of like that she has this sort of like she doesn't put up with his bullshit at the dinner. Like, he's just like, "Oh, I bet you got a lot of guys. Oh yeah, I bet you're gonna see me again." And she's just like, "Hey, come on, man. Look,
yeah.
I'm a fucking lady of 1980s. Like, this is empowerment, babies. Come on." I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I was into that a little bit.
Yep.
Also, my other question is, does Frank Zito have a job? Like, where is he getting money for Clam's Casino and hookers?
That's what I would like to, because when in that very first scene, he's like,
got a lot of cash.
She's like, "Hey, clock's ticking, honey," and he's like, "I got money."
Yeah. He's got real mall security energy. But
maybe
where is he getting this money?
Maybe he sells his art. Maybe he does, like,
that's true.
Gallery shows.
It's outsider art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Side in the 80s. That's a solid point, because I was watching Exterminator 2 this morning also, and the same kind of question came up to me where I was like, where the fuck is Paper Chase guy getting all this money? Because he has no job when the movie starts. But anyways, this movie that we just are doing our best to talk about and not get distracted. So they make basically another date. She's like, "I have a photo shoot tomorrow. Why don't you come by and check it out?" And and so we cut immediately to that, right?
Yeah.
And it is
real
her with like
hot
3 women things.
Scene.
Oh, and that song.
I fucking love that song. That is unfortunately not on the soundtrack.
Oh, really? I would imagine that it is, because I've just heard the one that's on Spotify. That's literally just the Chataway stuff. That's crazy. I mean, maybe they can't get the license for it. I can't imagine that they could.
I mean, how could you not?
I know. It's so fucking funny. It plays over and over. But anyways, photo shoot. There's this like beardo in the scene also, who is like, who did, where these dresses come from? Who did?
It feels like he should be somebody else.
Right. Well, here's the thing. That,
like, he should be a guy.
So that actor is not actually an actor. Surprise. He's the guy who owns the actual studio that they're in. And the way that they paid him was, you get to be in the movie.
He's gonna be famous.
Yeah, so we'll give you some lines, and they do it. And his whole thing is just he fucking harasses the models. But up to this point, it's been a little while since we've had like Frank doing his like whimpering, growling sound that he's been doing through it. And he sees one of the models, and he starts doing it again. And it's like, okay, he's gonna kill her next.
Yeah, so it just like fucking shows up, and he's gonna dissociate and make weird noises. It's totally cool. Yeah. There's nothing weird about that. Just sit in the corner and like breathe heavily and leer at women.
The thing about that is, I can see him doing that. Like, Spinell really gives these vibes. I think this movie really kind of ruined Joe Spinell for me. Like, because every time I'd see him in anything else, I'd be like, ugh. Because he's in Rocky also, and I saw
this is all too natural.
Yeah, it feels like it's really coming from him. But this is the scene. One of the models has like a necklace or something, or a bracelet or something that he steals, and as a way to sort of insinuate himself into her apartment, because that's what comes next. This movie is basically murder porn. It's just a setup and a setup, a setup and a kill, a setup and a kill, and a setup and a kill, like one after the other. It is again, like, I can't stress enough how little movie is in this movie. Because the next scene,
like if you want a good review of this, I bet Eli Roth will happily tell you why this is an important movie.
Yeah, probably. So because right after this, the next scene is the model's name is Rita. We go to Rita's apartment. We get a little nudity. She's putting on a bath for herself. And again, Frank just shows up to her apartment and knocks on the door. And the way that he sort of like gets the door open is he's like, "Oh, I have your thing that you left at the studio." And she's like, "Oh, cool. Thanks. You can go now." Like she's like she's like one of the only women in this movie who's like, "Get the fuck away from me, Frank Zito."
Yeah.
But
well, because she's also the only other woman who is not a sex worker.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. But but like this is like old time apartment like in New York. So
just shows up at her door sweating,
and he looks so weird. Yeah. But but he basically unlocks the door because it's one of those old school locks where for some reason the lock is on the inside of the door jamb. It's like a button that you push. And so like while she's not looking, he unlocks the door and then he lets himself in, but she doesn't know. And so there's a lot of there's a really awesome, basically what happens is she goes back to the tub, puts herself in, and he lets himself in, but you don't see it. It's
into this absurd bubble bath.
It's a ridiculous bubble bath. Like she should have been worried about overflow. But
it reminded me of the time that Bobby Brady gets his suit dirty and he uses too much soap.
Mrs. Brady, the bubbles are calling you.
Mrs. Brady, the suds are calling. That was my first thought when I saw that.
Yeah. But this is another one of those like competent filmmaking scenes that I actually like a lot, because what it is you're looking at Rita through the door. It's a very it's very typically lurid. It's but what happens is it starts to pull back, and as it pulls back, we're in the hallway, and at a certain point it pulls back, and you just see like Frank's arm and the knife and the shot, and it's like, ooh, okay. So it's another one of those moments where I felt like I just got to recognize it for doing something well. But yeah, this time he like ties her up and sort of menaces her for a while, doing the sort of "is it Frank or is it Mom" thing.
Which actually, this scene is the only one that feels really out of place to me, because for the most part, this movie is weirdly not gratuitous. Like, yes, it is very violent and it is kind of misogynistic, but only kind of.
You think? I feel like the fact that it's only it's a movie where a guy just kills women over and over.
But there's not a lot of like, they could have done a lot worse. There could have been a lot more menacing. Like that's the shit I don't want to see.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to see you torn. Like if you're gonna kill somebody, fine, whatever. It's part of your movie.
Right.
But like there's not a lot of that. And yet here they have this sort of drawn out scene where it's not torture, but it's still just sort of like this
right.
Doesn't
Because I suppose I can see that, because there's not, he doesn't like, I mean, there's a bit of mutilation and stuff like that. It's part of his thing, but there's not a lot of like stab. Like the kills happen very quickly. There's not a lot of like lingering on it. There's not a lot of relishing the violence.
Yeah, like there's no sexual violence in this. There's not a lot of nudity.
As a matter of fact, this scene is the only scene of nudity. It kind of feels like they threw it in just because, like, it's one of these things they got to have a little bit. But like right at the beginning, like with the sex worker in the hotel room, like she starts to undress and he says, "Keep your clothes on." So
thank God.
But yeah.
Both of you.
But he undresses more than the women do in this movie. But yeah. So he's got a switchblade on him. He stabs her, and I got to give it to him. Savini's blood looks great in this movie. It looks like real blood.
His personality, shitty. His blood, beautiful.
Fake blood, you scare me like the real thing. But yeah. So. We go back more he goes back to his own apartment, and this is the scene where he
is this the one where he has the ascot and the smoking jacket?
I think that's after.
He has this kind of another bizarre
I think
monologue. That was the monologue after the nurse got killed. This is the one where he puts on that weird hat with the wings, and he's got Jesus Christ.
He's got the sparker gun, and he starts like shooting the wall with pellets.
Again, this is a lot more improvisation, I think.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, hey man, just use what around. You're an actor. It's all about fantasy.
Yeah.
Use your environment.
Yeah. But like,
and he does, and it makes no fucking sense.
The thing is like, what story there is, like the only sort of glimpses you get into Frank as a character happens in these scenes. it's a kind of interesting way to sort of piece it together, but it doesn't really make for a terribly interesting movie. That's the thing, is it doesn't really work. I mean, like, you get you already know from the beginning that, just because it rips off Psycho so bad, that, like, okay, so his mother sucked. She was a prostitute. She was abusive to him.
You don't even really get that much. Like, if you read the Wikipedia thing, it's like Frank was an abused child, and I was like, okay, yeah, I guess.
Well, I mean, there are those bits where you hear, like, the kid's voice and you hear her, but, like, as far as you know, like, well, he puts a cigarette out on one of the mannequin's chest, and it sort of kind of goes along with all the scars that he's got on his chest. And then there's that sort of back and forth where you just hear the disembodied voices of the kid and the mother. It's supposed to be him and his mom, but
which is another, like, you didn't have to do this.
But, like, the extent of her torture seems to be putting him in the closet, you know?
Yeah, the number of times they really stumble in this sort of, like, back half of the movie is like, you know, I had respect for you a little bit before, and now you're just kind of phoning it in because somebody was like, you finished up the movie, and they were probably like, hey guys, quick point here. There's no story at all. Yeah. There's no connective tissue in this movie from beginning to end. They were like, oh, right. Okay, here's an idea. Psycho.
Yeah. But we get a lot. But this is it. We're starting to round the corner, and we're getting towards the end. And so Frank, he asks Anna out again, and she's like, "Yeah, sure." And so they get in the car. They're driving around. I can't remember where they're going. To go to lunch or something, or a movie. It doesn't matter. Fuck it.
To a Gothic cemetery in England.
Right before this, he says, and it's middle of the day as far as we know, and he's like, "Real quick, I got to stop off and pay my respects to my mother." At the cemetery, and when they get there, it's like dead of night, and there's like spooky lighting and fog and stuff.
Yeah, the fucking dry ice budget for this movie must have been enormous. That's why you ended up with so many porn stars. You spent all your money on dry ice. And Carolyn Munro is finally in her element.
Yep. She looks exactly where she needs to be, and they.
Yeah, this is I, Vampari. If you've ever seen that, it is very much like Gothic cemetery. Fog and lights, and it's like this movie was made in the 50s. All of a sudden.
And so she politely stands by, like, she has gone through so many red flags at this point, and this is it. This one should have been like, I am in a car with this man. She should have given some indication that she realizes that she's in danger. But nope, she's just accommodating as can be. They go...
At the very least, at the graveside, you just got to be like, hey, man, I got to go.
Like,
this is
like,
weird.
You know, this is going to take much longer because, like, this... Because how long did it take to get to the fucking cemetery? Because it's, like, dead of night all of a sudden.
Yeah. Like, I thought we were going to get lunch, and now it's 9:30. Yeah. I don't even know where we are.
Yeah, so he does a couple of Hail Marys, and he breaks down, and this is when he, like, attacks her, and he starts to strangle her, but she manages to, like, outfox him and gets away, and he does that thing where he suddenly reaches towards the sky and yells, "Mother!"
Best part of the
which
movie,
makes me wonder, have you ever seen the IT Crowd? Where Matt Berry, where Matt Berry, does the Douglas Reynolds thing. That's all I could think of when he did that. I was like, if I ever meet Matt Berry, I'm gonna ask, have you ever seen Maniac? But yeah, so but she gets away. He's got to kill her now, or he's sunk. So he chases her, and
she cuts him very badly with the shovel.
And I don't even know why she bothered. She gave him the slip. Like, she got away. Like, because here's the thing: Frank Zito does not have the cardio to be a slasher killer.
No,
not at all.
I mean, that man is precariously perched on the edge of a heart attack through this entire movie. Amp that heart rate up above 90, he's done for.
Yeah, but he loses her. She hits him with the shovel, and this explodes with blood. And so his natural inclination is to go back home. And when he gets there, he's like whimpering and, like, you know, he's just doing the thing that he does when he's in killer mode. But now all of the mannequins have come alive, and they're all of his victims. And they this is a part, like, have you ever seen Don't Go in the House? This reminded me of Don't Go in the House, which came out...
Now that movie is sleazy as
unbelievably gross.
Like, I find that morally objectionable.
So you've seen the uncut version then?
Yes, I
Because
have.
I've seen both, and the cut version, I was like, I don't see what the big deal is. I saw the other one, and I was like, okay, I see it. But
Like, that is gratuitous.
yeah, like that one, like this scene in particular, and also like a lot of the way that Frank Zito behaves makes me think that he saw that movie, because that movie definitely played in 40, like on 42nd Street, and it was only a year before this. But anyways, so all of the mannequins kind of come alive. Well, at least in his head they do. And they all like sort of subject him to the same sort of punishment that he did. They surround him on the
and
bed.
this scene is very Dawn of the Dead.
Wicked. And one of the corpses like pops up on the side of the bed while he's like looking at it. The headless one.
Or this is also very much like Choke on him. It's that scene.
Yeah, oh for sure. Like this is when the zombies are getting the bad guy. But that headless corpse also reused from Friday the 13th. That's Pamela Voorhees' body.
Yes.
But they stab him and stab him and stab him, and then they all grab him by the head and literally rip his head off. And I love the way the model looks, because for like, you know, if I freeze framed on the Tom Savini dummy, it's a little gray. This one looks just like Spinell. And
I bet if you watch the 4K, because there's a Blue Underground did a 4K.
I saw the 4K.
I bet if you watch the 4K, is that it? Because the print I watched looks like someone dragged it through the dirt. So I did not see the fancy one.
Yeah, it looks great, and just like the effect is super gross and very brutal, and it's really just sort of on brand for the rest of the movie. It's one of Savini's best kills, in my opinion. Yeah, so then it's sort of revealed. What happens is like some cops show up, and like I'm thinking these are like the most New York cops I've ever seen. It's just two of them. They sort of kick down the door, and they find Zito in bed, and it looks like basically he stabbed himself in his sort of psychotic fit. And then they walk out. Presumably they're gonna, you know, process the crime scene. But this is like the last sort of like final Carrie scare, as it sort of zooms in hard on his face and his eyes open. Roll credits.
This fucking movie.
So there you go, Maniac. I definitely, having like processed it and run it through for this podcast, and like watching it twice in like relatively quick succession, definitely changed my opinion of it. Like I'm not a fan of this movie really anymore. I used to be. I didn't really kind of go out of my way. Like with presented with other options to watch, I always pick something else. But
well, there's nothing fun about it. I think that's where it loses me. It's like there's just nothing here to dig into unless you want to watch women get killed. But even that, it's like
I'm with you on that. I think that's really what it is. Is like this movie is really mean. It has no sense of humor whatsoever. And like the thing that you can say about slasher movies, kind of writ large, is that they're all very much removed from reality. Like there's a very heavy like fantasy world element to them, because like
that's kind of the point.
Like that's the thing. Like you don't want to be sort of face to face with like real horror. And I can imagine like there are people who like this is really kind of their bag, is the stuff that's really grimy and nasty and in your face. That's just not me. We've done 3 very campy movies up to this point that are all very upsetting and unsettling for their own reasons. But like none of them are, I would say none of them are mean like this one is, you know, like this one really kind of like is really in the muck. It's in the shit.
Because this shit really does happen.
Yeah.
And I think, and especially at the time, it was really in the zeitgeist, and I think it was really happening, which is probably why maybe it's kind of like Godzilla. Like Godzilla came out not that long after the bombs. It's just like, maybe it's cathartic in a weird way in the context of it, but watching it now, it's just like, it's grimy, it's fucking gross. I know that women do get treated this way and have been murdered this way, and like, I don't want to watch that. Pieces is gratuitous and racist and awful. It's also fucking hilarious.
It's super silly.
And it's like, I can get down with that. This,
yeah.
I don't know.
That's the thing. There was probably a time in my life when this was definitely like probably around the time that I discovered this one, was when I was trading tapes very heavily, and I was really exposed to a lot of just mean fucking movies. Because
Yeah, like I know everyone thinks a Serbian film was real shocking. Do I want to see it? No.
yeah, I saw that one. I was gonna review it for Cinema Suicide, and there was the one movie that I got to the end of, and I was like, I fucking hate that movie. Like, I have nothing good to say about it.
Yeah, like, fuck you for making it.
I was extremely upset by it. Like, I just did not want to talk about it, so I never did. And I keep telling people, I'm like, fuck that movie. Don't take this as like a challenge. Fuck that movie. Just it's not. Don't patronize it.
No, it's not worth your time.
Yeah, like this is.
And you could say the same for this a little bit, except there are some things about it where it's like, the acting's not bad.
Yeah.
Some of those monologues, as kind of like queer as they are, and I mean queer in like the original sense of the
Right.
word, is like they're very odd moments, but they're kind of interesting to watch. Their cinematography is not that bad. To see the city that way is really interesting. Like, there's reasons to watch it. There's just not reasons to watch it again.
Yeah, yeah. I'd say it's worth a watch. Like, if you're a horror movie fan, you haven't seen it, check it out. Take the ride. Yeah. But then again, I mean, we just spoiled the entire fucking movie for you, so make your own decisions. But yeah, Maniac, a movie that I used to like. Now I'm not so much a fan of. Love the soundtrack. It's got some great gory special effects in it, but the vibe is like I said, despair is really kind of the dominant vibe. So what are we doing next?
Well, I'm going to hit you with an option here, because as much as programming is planned out, in the immediate term, we don't have anything. So I'm going to say, take your pick: The Howling, or, since we've talked about it a bunch of times in the last 2 weeks, The Sentinel.
Let's do The Sentinel.
All right,
that's probably my favorite haunted house movie, and I'm looking. This is just a perfect opportunity to watch it again.
And you get to see Burgess Meredith do some of the weirdest shit you'd never expect.
Yep. We're going to talk about Beverly D'Angelo a little bit, because I don't know what you know about her. She's got a crazy career. So
she does.
Yeah. So
she was what's her name? Lurleen
in The Simpsons. Yep. So we'll see you back here in 2 weeks when we do The Sentinel.
Ayo.